So that's two groups that we're putting together. That's different than adding two on a pile. And sometimes we confuse, a lot of adults that, I mean, I've been doing trainings on this a lot lately, a lot of adults are still having trouble, figuring out which is that, what's the distinction between them. We introduce all four of those in kindergarten. Okay? The taking apart is very similar. The only difference is that we have a new taking apart that we're starting to introduce, and that is where I'd say, Mary and I have 32 chocolates, we're gonna share them, but we don't have the same amount. How many could Mary have had and how many could I have had? There's multiple answers for that. We're not used to that in kindergarten. That's that composing, decomposing kind of thinking. And it depends on how, if I'm a hog, I could have one, or I could have 31, but I couldn't have 32, and I couldn't have 16, and I couldn't have 0, because I said we shared them. So there are some impossible answers, and then there are a whole bunch of possible answers. We're looking at a range of possibilities. That's laying that foundation for inequalities, which I don't think that they get, that those kinds of stories lay that foundation. And we're doing that early on in kindergarten. We wouldn't do it 32 with kindergarten, we do it within 10, but you get the idea. So we have time chocolates, how do we share them? We want them to compose and decompose. That's why base 10 blocks, not so cool, because they're not composing and decomposing. And we want them to do that with greater and greater numbers. So we see them doing these stories in K1 and 2 with bigger and bigger numbers, third grade with bigger and bigger numbers, and then including elapsed time and bringing those into play. Then they learn comparing stories in first grade. They learn about comparing numbers in kindergarten, but they learn comparing stories, that idea of additive comparison or subtractive comparison, 4 more than, 6 less than, starting in first grade, which is laying the foundation for expressions and integers, but they don't know that at the time. That's the idea of how, more than, less than. What's interesting is most of the questions we ask are how many more than. We rarely ask how many fewer. And that's something that we're trying to get into their vocabulary. Because when 6th grade is trying to teach those the idea of expression, less than, they need to have had exposure to situations where there were 4 less than. So we'd have to ask the question that way. If Sam had 4 less than so-and-so, how many did, so-and-so have? We don't typically do it. We always do the more than. So that's something to change in our habits. Then we get into the multiplicative structure starting in 3rd grade. The array in the area model is actually introduced in 2nd grade with geometry, but they don't solve word problems until 3rd grade. So they're introduced to making an array or taking a rectangle and segmenting it into rows and columns, sectioning into rows and columns to lay the foundation for area. I call it multiplication readiness. But then they solve word problems involving area in 3rd grade.
Are they going to be using the word array so that we should expect students coming up to know what that word means?
Yep. Isn't that good?
That would be great, because
Not
when
only
I say that,
not only that, but they're actually learning how to use area models in 4th grade and 5th grade for multiplication and division with multi-digit numbers and decimals.
And it follows right through to multiplying expressions and stuff. The thing I wanted to ask you about the 1st grade curriculum, often the traditional curriculum taught skip counting as a precursor to multiplication, skip counting being a skill.
Mm-hmm.
Is that one of the things that's going to drop away?
They don't actually do much skip counting at all.
Anymore. Okay.
They learn to count by 1s, 10s, 5s.
Uh-huh.
And that's really to help them with the structure to 5, the structure to 10 to get that base 10-ness.
Okay.
But they don't do skip counting by 2s anywhere in the standards.
Oh, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They don't, they do talk about even and odd in 2nd grade as a precursor to multiplication. And it helps, but adding 2 or counting by 2s, oftentimes that got kids just to count better, they count faster.
Mhm.
It didn't help them to really get the whole sequence.
Didn't serve the purpose for which it was intended.
Now in 3rd grade, 4th grade, if they want to do count bys to help them with their multiplication facts, I think that's fine. It's not called out in the standards, but it does help them to see, if I look at rows and columns and I can see 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, I think that's totally legit in 3rd grade. And I think that's a skill that has a conceptual piece to it, because I'm looking at a visual and seeing how I can do count bys. But actually drilling on count bys, I don't know that it's rich. Some kids need to help them memorize the patterns, etc. But 4th grade grade is really the first grade where they start looking at patterns anyway. Third grade also introduces the concept of equal groups. And that's how they get at multiplication and division. They first look at equal groups with finding the total. When I say, Sam has, 6 packages of cookies, and each package has 4 cookies each. So how many total cookies does he have? That multiplicative equal groups. But then they also look at the 2 types of division. There's the partitive division and the measurement division, where you're saying if I have, we pick apples, and there are, we pick 20 apples and we put them into 4 baskets, so there's an equal number in each basket. That kind of idea, how many are in each basket. Okay, that's that idea of partitive division where I'm dealing it out. And then they also get at that measurement division of, well, if I've ordered, packages of markers, and I need, each package has 8 markers, and I have, 32 markers, how many packages did I buy? Then I'm looking at measuring out sections of 8. This is critical when we start looking at multiplication and division with fractions, because we don't typically do a lot of situations where there's partitive division with fractions. I can't think of a single one, but we do a lot of measurement division with fractions. That's when we do divide fractions, is measuring out sections of a board into 1/8 of a foot pieces or whatever. That really would be 1/12 of a foot pieces, which would be inches, but 1/4 of a foot, whatever. We measure out sections. The problem is that we don't do enough measurement division, and the kids don't distinguish that. So that's one of the things that they learn in 3rd grade. They learn multiplicative comparison, which is the last structure in 4th grade. So all of those structures are going to be learned by the end of 4th grade, and then we take them and we apply them. And they don't just apply them. Starting in 3rd grade, they don't just have one structure. Actually, starting in 2nd grade, they wouldn't just have one structure, because starting in 2nd grade, they could have multi-step problems, where they can have a problem where they're adding to and comparing in the same problem. And they'd have to solve that because it's a multi-step. That's hard for 2nd graders right now because they're not used to it. They're used to single-step work. So the 2nd grade teachers, honestly, the grumpiest groups of teachers that I work with, not grumpiest, but most challenged, 2nd grade is one of them. Because the level of expectation that was 2nd grade before the Common Core and the level that is now, it's a big leap. 6th grade's another level that's a big leap. And
Especially when they're just entering a middle school, so you've got
there's a lot to deal with in 6th grade.
adolescent changes too.
Because if we think about all of this is supposed to learn before 6th grade, and some of us didn't even know that. So if they came in understanding that there were 8 different structures and used those structures to help them solve problems, they might persevere to solve problems. That's one of the big ideas I don't think kids have in high school. They don't know how to identify the structure. How do I create an equation that represents that situation? So we've been doing a lot with tape diagrams, where you can take each one of these and represent it with a tape diagram, or the Singapore model drawing, whatever you want to call it. Where then we're starting to add in multiple steps, multiple structure problems. Because starting in 2nd grade, they might have more than one structure. And starting in 3rd grade, they might have multiply and then add. And starting in 5th grade, they might have that with fractions and decimals. And 6th grade is going to do it with, anything is fair game. Because 6th grade has ratios and proportional reasoning. That's that introduction. So 6th grade is the first grade that's actually been called out that they need to use tape diagrams or bar models. But I've been saying they should be starting that as early as 2nd grade. Because if they don't learn how to make a diagram to solve a problem, that's one of the modes. So that needs to be introduced. And the picture doesn't have to be, the thing about tape diagrams is it's more representational. It's a layer of abstraction. In fact, then I'm not making 15, I'm making a bar and labeling it 15. We don't start that in 1st grade. Because 1st grade is still at the level where 1 is 1. So one box stands for 1. It's not till the end of 1st grade, beginning of 2nd grade, where they can understand that 1 can stand for many. That's why they leave money out of 1st grade. That we don't talk about money, except to count it, to practice our count by ones, count by tens. We don't really do anything with money until 2nd grade. It makes sense now. Isn't it interesting?
It does.
That's all based on research. So and
it's
funny.
just one coin that's not its value.
Right, that poem by Shel Silverstein, that smart poem, I'm convinced it was written by a 1st grader or a kindergarten, because they don't know.
It could have been written by a 6th grader.
Shouldn't
Some
have
of
been.
them.
Not
I
a Common
agree.
Core 6th grader. right? Not a common
One
core
would help.
sixth grader. But yeah, isn't that interesting? So I think this is another huge piece to these standards that is impactful at the middle school and high school level. Because if you think about kids coming in saying, oh, that's an adding to structure, but it's also a multiplicative comparison structure, so I'm gonna be using two different operations. So this is multi-step, I'm gonna set up an equation, the unknowns here, this is huge. And it's all starting below they get to, before they get to you. I would say, it's funny because when we plan out the third grade unit sequence, I put 2081 on there, and they said, well, that's the second grade standard. I said, third grade every year is going to have to review 2081. 2081 is the additive structures, the 5 structures with 2-digit numbers. They're gonna ramp it up to third grade and do it with 3-digit numbers, but they're gonna start off the year reviewing those structures every year. It's never gonna go away. They're gonna review it. They're gonna teach it in second grade. We're gonna remind them of it in third grade. I keep it on the third grade sequence every year. I don't think that's ever gonna go away. I think fourth grade will probably do it too. I think everybody should probably start off the year with the problem-solving structures. Because if they don't know, how do they solve problems?
And if our problems are contextually based, sometimes we recognize things in one context and not in another. I mean,
That's exactly it.
Yes.
And you know what's fascinating to me is people who, for their job, they can solve problems in their job, but then you give them a totally different context and they don't know how to, they don't have the concept. They have some of the concept because they can apply it to their job. Those people in the trades who, I mean, it was funny, one of the folks at a training I was at yesterday said they hired a carpenter to do some work and, they were talking about their backsplash and they were calculating, how many, or tile man or whatever was figuring out how many, and they just did it in their head like that. But you ask him to do that in another context and he can't do it because he's so good at that concept only in this context. We don't want people to be that limited.
Graduated student went to a interview and she gets answered or asked a question that she doesn't know the answer to, so she says C.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those extra
Yeah. Isn't that sad?
When a teacher says that, since they don't know the answer, just what you see.
Oh my gosh. But you know what? That's what we did to these kids.
Yeah.
Don't think, just do, right? Ours is not to reason why, just invert and multiply. Right? How many of us learned that when we were kids?
Of course. Would you give an example of a multiplicative comparison at a
Sure.
fourth grade level? I'm
Sure.
just curious.
Well, what's key about multiplicative comparison is that's also the key to place value. So 10 times as much. One of the big ideas that they have in fourth grade is that they really solidify place value, where they learn that the digit in one place is 10 times the value of the digit to its right. And in fifth grade, they take it to 1/10 of the value of the digit to its left. I'm just saying that, you know how I always,
Yeah.
you know how you talk to people and you're facing the other direction, so I always mix up my right and my left when I try to talk to people.
Mhm.
But it really doesn't matter, because it's the digits and the way you're looking at it, but somehow I screw that up every time. So you know what I mean, right? That's multiplicative
Thank you.
comparison in an application. It's the application of math to math, right? That's where that's a hard concept for kids to really connect that. When we get 5 times as much, so-and-so's age 4 times as many as so-and-so and 3 times as many as so-and-so. We're getting at ratios and proportional reasoning. And they don't know it yet. Like, that's laying that foundation. That's why I think 6th grade, we were laughing at that unit, and I said, I really don't think that this unit is all that hard if they got multiplicative comparison in 4th grade, but if they don't, we're gonna go back down to that, because that's what it needs to.
I'm just wondering if that's what I have to do.
You might have to go down to multiplicative comparisons.
I mean, all of
It
this.
may well be,
They really don't get it. I mean, I've asked them questions like, it's 2 times as much, this quantity is 2 times as much, and like.
Well, that's why they don't know how to write an expression or an equation, because they don't.
They don't get
they
good
don't
at
have the
either.
concept.
But this is so wonderful that they're gonna be doing this. I just think we're gonna have totally different kids in 5 years.
We are.
gonna
I
take-
can't tell you how excited I am.
Yeah.
But this would require that elementary school teachers understand
Learn that.
this to a very deep degree, and I'm not sure that will happen in 5 years.
I think that's changing too. I
Well,
honestly do.
I just,
And
I
you
would
know
like
darn
there
well
to
that
be-
the model curriculum that we're writing is going to have a lot of time on this.
But
These
if
are
they
always
don't
green standards.
understand it themselves, what the differences are,
Right.
and since we don't have content area specialists,
Mm-hmm.
I find that when I talk to some
should.
elementary school teachers, I totally think we should, but I find that elementary school teachers, well, I don't really like math, so we do more reading.
Yeah, that.
Great,
we do have
That's
that.
changing. I
Yeah.
think it's changing. I think that they're seeing, one of the things that elementary folks are embracing is this idea of focus. That they said, you know, if you let us focus on something and you showed us what it really was, we would, like, they're so
Gladly
welcome
do
to
it.
it.
Mhm.
They're terrified by taking things off their plate, saying, well, what am I gonna do when you cut things from my book? Because they've been dependent upon their book. But they're also open to it because they know it's better. They welcome it. They don't like rushing. They don't like the fact that they're getting kids who don't get it, and they're giving kids who don't get it. Nobody likes that. Nobody says, oh, I wanna do a mediocre job of teaching.
No, I don't think they do,
So
but I
they
think
don't
when
want
you
to.
have all of those subject areas to teach, and like you go down to kindergarten, I mean, you take kids that have come from a home where there's nobody at home and they're left hours
They-
on end,
yeah.
and they have no concept of what a classroom looks like. And then you take the kid that came from a home like yours, where there's a lot of enrichment going on.
I mean,
and
we have a
they
number line
have-
on the floor, and we're
Yeah.
Right,
talking about
and
it.
they've had the structure, like in my home, I could read before I went to kindergarten and do simple addition and counting because
you
my
didn't.
family had
They
the
did that.
expectation that I would start doing that, and like, that's a lot for a kindergarten teacher to.
It is, but part of the issue that we're seeing also is that some of the things that moms and dads do to help prepare kids for school are very procedural also. So even those kids who are very good at their math facts don't have concepts because they can't recognize the structures. And they might have the memorized fact, but you give them a real world context, they don't know which fact to apply. So we're seeing that, thank you, mom and dad, for doing that portion. We're gonna do this portion. And we have to help mom and dad learn what's damaging and what's helpful. And I'm not trying to discount the help of mom and dad, but sometimes they are not helpful. You know, they're in a hurry to get to the procedure just as much as we are.
Well, and they didn't learn how to do it this way, they learned procedures, so they're doing what they know.
Exactly, exactly. I have twins. I'm in a twins club. One of the things that we did at our twins state convention was I taught some math games, and that was one of the presentations. And we talked about, you know, why we play that game and what we learned from that game. And then they just soaked it up because they're like, oh my God, I could play this. We gave everybody a deck of cards and a bag of little dice. And we said, now take it home and play it with your twins. And we're laughing because I'm like, well, my twins are, you know, they're 8 months old. Like, save it, obviously. You know, they'll swallow the dice and they'll win the cards. But the point is, you're learning the concepts. It was a blast. I think parents are so open to doing whatever they want, you know, they can for their kids. They just need to learn what the right things are. What it's come out that, you know, like ISBE, we've said, well, I think we need to do some kind of awareness for parents, webinars for parents, to help them. Because otherwise they're anti-Common Core, because they're hearing all this stuff on the news and the internet, and they don't realize that, you know.
It's hard to get parents to do that, you've got those select fees that do it all, and then.
Well,
the
we do
rest.
it with those mandated appearance times. You know, you have to show up if you want your report card. Let me show you something. Here's the modes of representation. Here's why this report card looks this way. Just a little mandated appearance piece, you know? Sometimes.
The task we
Yeah, we
have
don't
is
have
hard.
that.
The task ahead of us is
Oh,
hard,
it
it's
is.
a challenge, but that doesn't mean that we back away from it. All we can do is face it.
My district where my kids go, they have this proof of residency event, and I said to them,
Oh, I
hey,
love it.
everybody has to go to the proof of residency event. How about if you have some kind of a video showing where they're standing in line about the new standards and what's changing? And they said, I don't know that they're gonna do that, but I even said, I'll, you know, you can play, I'll talk, and you can educate that way. I mean, lots of districts have those kinds of events where parents are
Yeah.
mandated to do something. You have to show up and prove your residency. Or they have to do it online. Well, before you get to that, you have to watch this little clip that you can't skip about the new standards, you know? Technology is a wonderful thing. You can torture people with it. Wouldn't it be nice if we could do that? this is huge. Now, usually